This video is sponsored by Crimson Manifesto, Knuckles OX, Zach Haji, Jopi, and Baba Snake. We resume with the adults of the extended Song clan as they return to Mount Paozu directly following the tournament. No one has said a word since saying goodbye to their boys and their friends, with Bardock wondering why Gine in particular is acting this way, considering she helped him keep up the Bryce Lou ruse and to make his escape after the finals. However, he is not left to wonder long, as when Muezli and Gohan make their way inside, Gine holds an arm out to block the door, while looking into her mate's eyes at some of that newly developed steel he's come to admire in her. Figuring this will at least give him his answers, Bardock stops, his arms instinctively crossed, while meeting Gine's eyes as if to wordlessly bid her to speak. Though to his surprise, she only utters a single word, why. Sighing deeply, Bardock asks why what, as he does not doubt there are a great many things she would like explained regarding his conduct in recent days. Thankfully, it is almost as though she had been waiting for him to ask, as suddenly, she goes from taciturn to a verbal volcano, demanding to know why he pulled that Bryce Lou stunt, why he felt the need to beat on their sons when he already knows he's stronger than them, why he's taking to drinking so heavily again, and why he lied, especially to her. Even heavily intoxicated, Bardock can see that these are not really separate questions, but rather facets of a larger one. That being, is he relapsing into his old ways, and the man he was when they first arrived on Earth? And so placing a hand reassuringly on her shoulder, he assures that this is not backsliding. The reason he wanted to do all this is to help their kids grow, and not into stronger tools for vengeance against Frieza, or as an extension of himself meant to reflect well on him, like that vain bastard Cognac would. No, he just wants them to grow into better men. That's what this whole thing with the Earthling martial arts schools and the training trips has been about. It's also why he wanted to be the one to test them personally, and help hammer out any faults the Earthling masters couldn't, since they're not used to dealing with alien kids. Taken aback slightly by this candor and emotional maturity from Bardock, Gine softens a little, though there is still some reproach to her voice as she states that even still, he should have told her. She is their mother too after all, making them partners in this, so she thinks she's owed that much. Grinning slightly, as he pulls his other arm around her now, in something reminiscent of an embrace by Saiyan standards, he promises that he'll work on sharing more with her, sardonically adding that next time she can be Bryce Lou if it means that much to her. This causes Gine to stifle a laugh, which in turn makes Bardock smile more, as he's always loved the softer side of her. Though as he leans in for a kiss, she playfully pushes him away, stating that his breath is atrocious right now, so he needs to watch out his mouth and stop drinking that awful brew if he expects anything from her. Figuring this might finally lead to the intimacy he's been craving, the Saiyan warrior makes his way around back to the water barrel, only to be greeted by the cosmic cockblock that is Muezli once again, this time with her evidently preparing to take a bath. Though she is still fully clothed, just the thought of her bathing for some reason stirs something distantly in Bardock. Though quickly dismissing this as just a byproduct of his current amorous state, he bluntly tells the Cerulean she can freeload his water in a minute, or use the indoor bath instead. He just needs to dunk his head first. Somewhat sarcastically, Muezli warns him not to pass out and drown, though there is no relish to the thought despite their agreement around killing him. Instead, it almost sounds like a genuine warning in regards to his recent drinking. Truthfully, Bardock isn't entirely sure what to make of this, with the words even staying with him after he has completed his task and made his way back to Gine. So much so that instead of trying to initiate anything with his mate again while Muezli's occupied, he instead finds himself seated at the kitchen table, stewing while Gohan sits across from him, looking much more sprightly after a week-long vacation on Papaya Island, especially in light of seeing so many incredible displays of martial artistry from the younger generations. Figuring he might as well get the old man's help, at least to get that damn woman's words off his mind, Bardock recounts the encounter, asking if Gohan has any insight, with the elderly human in turn giving a parental smile, as he replies that he thinks his guest is simply reading too much into the exchange, as while Muezli's feelings towards him are undeniably complicated, the question should less be about what she meant, and more what the comment meant to him, suggesting a bout of self-reflection and meditation might be in order. While Bardock does respect Gohan's wisdom and insight, he is in no mood for such things at the moment, grouchily grunting that he ain't sober enough for that, before tersely bidding the old man good night, and eagerly seeking out his own bed for the first time in a long time. In spite of this somewhat rude dismissal, Gohan cannot help but look on fondly and proudly, as having come to know Bardock well these past few years, he has no doubt the man will put in the work required to make the situation right, just as he did with the guise of Bryce Lou. As for all his faults, that is the sort of man his adoptive son-in-law is. A few weeks have passed since the tournament, with the three boys having all finished up their respective businesses at their schools, and begun making their way home. Surprisingly, Raditz had been the first to return, having brought the young Hercule around for a week-long sleepover that had only ended when Bardock had kicked him out, threatening to do the same to his firstborn if he objected. This is because during his time at Satan Castle, Raditz had picked up a new hobby from Hercule, that being gaming, with the long-haired youth wanting to maintain his habit alongside his player too, even after returning home. The only issue had been the boys' insistence on playing those blasted video games long into the night. That, and the other television they had gotten from somewhere, though truthfully, Bardock had not cared about that second fact too much. As a result, Raditz had almost been glad when Granolah returned a few days later, as this had afforded him a new player too. Though aloof as ever, Granolah had out and out refused, both despite the pineapple, and because he had better things to do, such as is going on hunts, both with Gine and alone, as well as tending to a new dagger Master Tao had given him, with the boy being devoted to his maintenance, polishing it daily, as well as looking around for other weapons to add to his collection if he might find any. Thankfully, there had been one brother who was willing to play with Raditz, that being Goku, who despite his claims of homesickness, had been the last to return, stating that he only did so because Master Oshi ended up getting a new student, after the guy had heard and saw how well he'd done at the tournament. A kid named Kudadin or Krilsing or something. Goku can't remember, though he kinda looks like a chestnut, and that made him hungry, so he wanted to come home for some of his mama's cooking. However, unlike Raditz, who has become something of a couch potato, Goku does not fall completely prey to the flashing lights and 2D graphics of early video games. Instead, still wants to have adventures, especially now that he's got the Kento Un to help him fly around the world easier too. One such exploration sees him and Gine scouting around a nearby country for a picnic spot, though instead of finding lush fields, they find a land beset by a tyrant who's grown fat on their produce while the people starve. As Saiyans, nothing could be seen as crueler. And what's more, Gine is personally unsettled by someone so like Frieza being here on Earth, with the mother and son pair as a result, band together to banish this King Gurumez, and return the land, and especially the food to the people, all the while celebrating with a feast that makes Bardock and Raditz jealous when they hear about it that evening. As a result, the older Saiyan boy is pretty willing to part with his games next time Goku goes on an adventure, even bringing Hercule and an insistent Chi-Chi along. As this time, they attempt to track down Spike the Devilman and get even for his actions at the tournament, having heard of a place called Devil's Castle on an island called the Devil's Hand, which surely must be where he resides. Unfortunately, instead of encountering Spike, all they find is this lame-o named Lucifer, who Hercule and Chi-Chi can beat on their own, while the Saiyans attempt to raid the place's pantry. But unfortunately again, all they find is a boring old treasure room, with the pair being quick to dismiss it since they can't actually eat gold. Raditz is sure he made Kakarot try, though Goku does gather up a few gifts for his family, including a new sword for Granolah, a jewel selected for Grandpa to use as a walking stick, since he sometimes gets tired without the power pole, and a big diamond the size of his head for his parents and Muezli, who seem very appreciative of the gift. Speaking of his parents, Goku is also the first to approach Bardock about resuming their morning spars, as well as for advice on growing his tail back faster, since he doesn't quite feel right without it, and can't use his crazy monkey style to the fullest anymore. Out of guilt, Bardock agrees, seeing the pair have daily matches before breakfast once again, with it becoming clear how much Goku has grown, having an approximate power level of 1456 already. However, this is not his only form of growth, as having matured somewhat from his time under Roshi, he is more serious and effective in his independent training, showing a real desire for growth that causes Bardock to one day ask what drives the boy, only to then face fall when Goku reveals he wants to fight strong guys like Unky Bryce again, with the older Saiyan making a mental note never to reveal a secret to this one, as it might crush him. Following one of these morning spars, when Goku has decided to take a load off, Bardock for really the first time begins his own training in view of one of his children, as while sparring with the kid is good fun, he is far from a challenge. For that, he has to rely on ghosts. Taking up a fighting stance, the scarred Saiyan begins throwing a few punches into the open air, obviously hitting nothing, and causing Goku to giggle that his pop is being silly, since he's over here on his break. However, this earns him no response, as Bardock instead begins to focus, swinging faster and harder, while employing footwork and dodges now, as though we're actually fighting a real opponent. That is because in Bardock's eyes, he is. Before him stands the hulking figure of Konyak the Mighty, sneering down at him even now as he throws his own punches, each one powerful, though sloppy, as through slurred words and rancid breath that Bardock can almost remember smelling, he unloads the litany of his son's sins upon him. Being more than used to and fed up with this every time they fight, so to speak, Bardock moves to end this, ducking low and allowing a glancing blow to scrape his left shoulder, so he can come in and deliver a decisive body blow to the old Saiyan, banishing him back to the nether from whence he came, until he's needed for another spar. However, this does not mean the training is done, as feeling a pair of ethereal eyes on his back, Bardock next turns to see his late younger brother Turles, a grown man now, as he adopts that old stance from their play fights before barreling at him with the same ferocity as the beast that stole his life, lowering its center of gravity as to not be barreled over. Bardock meets his brother's charge with a headbutt so strong that for a moment, Goku thinks he hears the crack of skull on skull and can see the sweat flying from his father's brow from the impact and strain his intense shadowboxing is causing. Bluntly, this makes no sense to the boy. Though mesmerized by the true power of his father, he watches on, reflecting on how perhaps this is how his dad kept growing in strength all alone, despite already being the strongest man on the planet by far. Back with Bardock, he has recovered from his rattled brain, and so using a bit of Roshi's fighting style, lurches out of the way of Turles' incoming uppercut, only to grab him in an arm lock and flip him over his shoulder. This time, Goku is sure he sees it, the brief puff of dirt being sent into the air as his dad's invisible opponent hits the ground, before transforming with the dust into the clear figure of Unky Bryce Liu, mask and all, as he and Bardock square off in matching fighting stances. Gruffly, Bardock muses that in the end, it's always him he has to overcome. Then as one, the two fighters clash fists, with Goku now able to see the battle as clearly as Bardock can, as each blow is like a mirror, so that every time one manages to get the upper hand, the other comes along to balance things out, ensuring that they remain perfectly matched. However, before the fight can reach its climax, a sly voice speaks up, musing that he's offended that he is not one of Bardock's shades, causing the two Saiyans to look up, to where Spike the Devilman sits perched up in a tree, his pitchfork balanced on his knees. Feeling the shadows leaving him, Bardock harshly questions what the pervert wants, to which Spike replies that he's the devil come to receive his due, plain and simple, though this enigmatic response is anything but, as the blue-skinned man descends and wastes no time in thrusting his three-pronged weapon right at Bardock's chest. Rolling sideways to avoid the strike and also shield Kakarot, Bardock tells his son to run back to the house and keep his mouth shut about what's going on, with the boy petulantly protesting that he can help. Firmly, Bardock replies that the best way he can help is to scram, since then his focus won't be split between protecting him and taking down Spike. Nodding determinedly, Goku scrambles to his feet and runs away as fast as his short legs can carry him, which is actually pretty fast, allowing Bard to get down to business as he squares up with the Devilman, who begins to laugh at a quite villainous way for a hero that the man should have joined forces with his progeny, as that was his only hope against the new power that he has achieved. Confirming Bardock's suspicions that the man's growth shown in the budokai was a mere farce, as by stabbing its pitchfork into the ground and setting his body alight in a raging pink ki that burns like hellfire, the fellow champion attains a transformation not unlike that a saint can undergo, as he now stands adorned in a macabre armor, whilst his power has noticeably grown about tenfold, to a point of extreme comparability with Bardock's own power level, as Spike has now become Great Devilman. With a smirk in his new state, Spike coolly says that he's still not impressed with the caring father routine, as it rings hollow to one who has seen his exploits thus far. Though if some part of the man does care for his offspring, rest assured, he has no intention of harming them, hence why he spared young Gojo back at the tournament. He's just here for the brigand Bruce Chun. Getting over his shock at this quickly, as he was overwhelmed by the excitement at the challenge, the only response from the Saiyan is grunting that's fine by him. Then, just as suddenly, Bardock goes on the attack, attempting to finish Spike off before he can use one of those Devil Might beams, by using the same move he did against the Cognac Shadow, crouching low and dashing in at shocking speeds. Though as he will learn, there's a key difference between that fight and this one, that being the Devilman is real and has a weapon, and more importantly, a weapon with reach, meaning he can strike before Bardock is in range to retaliate, forcing him to break off the attack, so he is not skewered on the prongs. Proving his adaptable nature, Bardock next tries Ki Blast, rising into the air and raining them down on the invader, even if Gine won't be happy about him scaring off the wildlife. However, Spike would not be Bardock's nemesis if he was not equally capable, with him deftly catching each of the blasts on his pitchfork's prongs without detonating them, and creating the impression of the world's most deadly dango, as he flies up and attempts to shove them down Bardock's throat, resulting in a devastating explosion which sees Bardock flat on his back in the dirt, while the devil flaps his wings above him. Seeing the end in sight, Spike then readies his Devil Might beam to finish things. Though before it can fire, something very long and red strikes him in the back of the head, leaving a large lump, as from the tree line, Kakarot's shrill voice demands the Devilman leave his papa alone. Realizing what Kakarot must have thrown, Bardock looks to the place where the object had landed, with him being proven right, as he sees Grandpa Gohan's power pole laying a few feet away. Knowing this might be just what he needs to turn the tide, Bardock rolls to the side and grabs the pole, before having it extend out to strike Spike in the face and knock him out of the air, completely disrupting his plans. Spotting what Bardock has in his hands, Spike muses that it seems their duel is not over yet, charging in and beginning a clash of Trident against Quarterstaff. While Spike is more experienced with his tool, Bardock has the instincts and battle IQ of a Saiyan warrior who has spent his entire existence in life or death situations just like this, giving him the uncanny ability to learn on the fly and quickly match up with and overpower his rival. Unfortunately, one issue that no amount of talent can compensate for is the fact that Spike's pitchfork is made out of some sort of hellish metal, while Bardock's pole is made out of wood, albeit enchanted, meaning each time the Devilman uses a thrust, it splinters the red varnish and presents another weak point Spike could exploit to shatter the staff entirely. Seeing this, Bardock begins looking for a way to bring an end to the fight before this can happen, with one revealing itself presently, as taking his weapon in both hands and raising it above his head, Spike leaps up high into the air once more, evidently intent on skewering Bardock from above. However, this presents one glaring weakness, and so couching the power pole like a spear as Broer would, he commands it to extend, with the red rod rocketing up to strike Spike, not in the face, or the chest, or even the stomach, but instead, right between the legs, seeing the Devilman let out a small strangled scream, as his blue leotard provides nothing in the way of protection. 10 minutes later, Goku and Bardock come back home, slumping down at the kitchen table, as Gine asks if they had fun in their spar, commenting that it took longer than usual this time, and shows they didn't go too nuts out there. At this word, father and son share a brief grimace, then as one, agree that it was a pretty boring spar actually, and they just lost track of time. While suddenly, for some mysterious reason, Raditz doesn't feel so alone in his trauma from the budokai. By now, life on Mount Paozu has settled back into a steady rhythm, with the entire family once again under one roof. Though just because things are routine does not mean they are idyllic, as thanks to having 3 active young boys living together again, huge messes have begun piling up more and more, with the trio's contribution to fixing them sadly not rising to the same level. Bardock has also not innocent as a bit of a slob, placing further burden especially on Gine and Muezli as the main people tending to the household. Having gained enough self-confidence and esteem to not wear this, the two women make it known that certain household chores will henceforth be shared, though for the sake of fairness, distribution will not be decided by them, but instead earned. They then unveil what they dub the Choreless Tournament, in which each week they will form teams of 2 and engage in a friendly battle royale for the right to receive more favorable tasks. Naturally, the team who is eliminated first will have to perform the most odious and taxing chores, such as cleaning the house, doing any maintenance that is required, and of course, scrubbing the toilet, with this last chore hopefully serving as the ultimate incentive not to lose. As for the second place team, they get the laundry and the dishes, while the winning team gets the most fun of the tasks, such as hunting or shopping, and meal prep, as well as making sure Grandpa Gohan is seen to if he needs anything. As a household of fighters, this gets everyone on board quite easily, since if they have to do boring old chores, they may as well decide them with some action. The only question now is who everyone should choose as their partners for this first iteration of the tournament. As the ones who devised the whole scheme, it is only natural that Gine and Muezli team up, while Goku eagerly asks Raditz if he wants to be his partner, allowing them to dust off some of their old combo moves. Though to his surprise, the elder Saiyan boy rejects this offer, stating that he's gonna go with Granolah, since while the Mosshead is a jerk, they can cover each other's weaknesses well. Not to mention, this gives them both the best shot at beating Bardock. Speaking of the scarred Saiyan, he makes no attempt at cozying up to anyone, not really caring who his partner is, though when he sees Kakarot's sad little face at being looked down upon, he cannot help but relate, and so ruffling his youngest boy's hair, he tells him not to sweat it, since he's already got a plan to win this whole thing, causing Goku to beam and fist bump his father, declaring that with his papa by his side, there really is no way they'll lose. That afternoon, the match at last is set to begin, with Gohan acting as a referee, while revealing that they'll be using the World Tournament rules, meaning if a fighter is unresponsive for a 10 count, goes out of bounds, which is to say leaves the clearing they have allocated as their tournament grounds, or surrenders, they are disqualified. With this said, the match begins, seeing Raditz and Granolah smirk at each other, ready to see which of the other teams chooses to target them first, as the obviously most dangerous, only to face fall when Bardock and Goku charge headlong at their mothers instead, having deemed them the strongest. It is here that Bardock reveals his plan, with it being a devious one worthy of his eldest son, as he holds Kakarot in front of his face like a shield, trusting that Gine and Muezli won't harm the darling little cherub, allowing him to close in and wham! Bardock is struck by 2 pains at once, as Muezli uses her cerulean aim to fire a small beam of ki between 2 of Goku's hairs, leaving him unharmed and striking Bardock between the eyes, while at the same time Gine stampedes at him and knees her mate in the gut, scowling that he should know better than to use their baby boy as a shield. She then attempts to take Goku from him, though reminding his mother that he's a fighter too. The young Saiyan used this as a chance to counterattack, seeing the pair engage in a flurry of blows. Smiling proudly at his boy, Bardock tells him to keep it up, while he flies across the field to force Muezli into close quarters battle, something that plainly favors him. Over with Gine and Goku, their fight is a lot closer than one might expect, as while Goku is a little boy, he has learned a lot, not just from Master Roshi, but from Bardock and his brothers too, having become quite adept at aping his father's fighting style, to the point where he can mix in some drunken boxing with his turtle school and crazy monkey techniques, making him a highly unpredictable fighter, even compared to his canon self. And when coupled with this small size and speed, this is a potent combination, which even a technically ex-Frieza Force soldier such as Gine cannot compete with for long, resulting in her taking an uppercutting jumping kick to the jaw, which rattles her brain and sees her remain prone for the entirety of Gohan's counting, meaning she is surprisingly the first elimination. As soon as this is declared, Goku rushes up to his mom to check on her, wanting to be sure she's not hurt or mad at him, though to his surprise, when Gine opens her eyes, it is with a wide smile as she lifts him aloft, crying with pride that her baby boy is a really strong Saiyan warrior just like his father. Meanwhile, Bardock and Muezli's fight has become quite heated, with the Cerulean using a lesser-known skill her people possess to try and target Bardock's vital points with her fingers in order to paralyze him and earn a win via 10 count. However, being aware of this trick from his time massacring her race, Bardock is able to employ lurching and swaying movements to change position, just enough that instead of striking him critically, she deals a number of glancing blows akin to a massage. For reasons he cannot explain, this suddenly puts thoughts in Bardock's mind that he would rather not be there, of a more sensual type of massage, followed by something so shocking that he instinctively flares his aura, with this being enough to blow Muezli as the one standing at ground zero out of the clearing, thus securing him a win, albeit a highly startling and disturbing one, which the green-haired woman also seems incredibly upset with, though likely as a result of being back on toilet duty. This just leaves Bardock and the 3 boys, and so wanting to end things, Raditz and Granolah fly right at Goku, seeing him as the weakest link, only for the boy to seemingly vanish and reappear seating on Bardock's shoulders, causing the older brothers to tumble happily through his afterimage and right into Bardock's waiting arms, at first showing them the respective worthy warriors with what seems like a bear hug. But instead, Bardock is merciless in his response, grabbing them each by the back of the head and smacking them together, causing an unpleasant crack to fill the clearing as Raditz and Granolah stagger back, clearly punch-drunk. However, this is not the end, as before they can conclude their impression of drunken boxing and go back on the attack, Bardock grabs them each by the shirt front and hurls them high into the air, with them quickly clinging the tallest tree in the forest while trying to right themselves and fly. Unfortunately for them, this is the worst place to be, as with no risk of collateral damage, Goku fires a Kamehameha from atop his father's shoulders, with the beam flying straight up and catching both his brothers, knocking them out as well and ending the inaugural choreless tournament. Smiling wildly at this outcome, Goku gives his dad a hug, calling him the greatest. Though this enthusiasm does curdle a little when Gine points out that this means Bardock will be in charge of all the cooking for the next week or so, while Muezli takes the opportunity to smack him in the back of the head, as both revenge and punishment for not realizing this obvious issue. Frowning a little, Bardock grouses that he doesn't see what Kakarot and the others are pouting about, though petulantly, Goku replies that his papa only knows how to make two things, charred meat and PB&Js. Frown only deepening, Bardock protests that his sandwiches are damn good, but as the others share a look, a silent agreement is made that from now on, they let whichever team Gine is on win, since even if they have to scrub the toilet, at least they'll get a decent meal afterwards. We now move over to another family of sorts, that being Kami, Monito, and Mr. Popo up on the lookout. Naturally, they have been observing the world, but especially the Sonchun cereal clan, from their growing pains in the early days, to the boys' days at school of the tournament, and their recent reconvening with its own trials and tribulations. Through this, Kami has finally let go of almost any suspicion he has regarding Bardock, thanks to his deeds so far on the planet, and Monito's favorable perception of the man. Though this is not to say they have done nothing but watch passively, as they have also spent time building a bond of their own, having become quite fond of each other's company, spending long nights sitting among Mr. Popo's flowers and sharing stories. While for the most part, Monito has been the main conversationalist here, telling Kami of their homeworld, traditions, and people, since they are extraterrestrials too, after all, and learning so this way is a lot easier to process. He has also expressed interest in learning more about the Earth from his view and the other Namekians' time here. In turn, Kami has been equally forthcoming, viewing it as only fair that he gives as much as he receives, though there is one area in which he remains somewhat cagey, that being his time training to become Guardian, the circumstances of his ascension, and the years directly following. Being a perceptive man, Monito had seen that these were painful memories for his friend, and so had not intruded, with this ultimately proving to be for the best, as in time, his patience will be rewarded, as finally, one evening, not long after the tournament, where the brash Saiyan boy Raditz had proved he could move beyond his baser nature, Kami had invited Monito to sit with him, and hear the tale he had up until now kept hidden from him, the shameful saga of King Piccolo. Even Piccolo's downfall had not been by his hand, but by a human hero, proving truly how impotent, ineffective, and undeserving a guardian he has always been. Only when this had been said did Monito speak, telling his friend that he knows all too well the welcome embrace of self-loathing, recounting the deep despair he had fallen into after he alone among his Namekian brethren survived the Saiyan invasion of planet Cereal, adding that were it not for his charge to care for Granolah and the Dragon Balls, he may well have consigned himself to oblivion. However, since he had not been able to take this avenue, he had been faced with no choice but to walk an even harder road, to accept his circumstances and the hand he had in creating them, as only then could he let them go. If Kami would let him, he'd like to help him do the same, though for this healing to occur, it would require him to face his demons, quite literally in this case. Unsurprisingly, Kami had at first been averse to such an idea, but in a testament to their bond, he had eventually relented, dispatching Mr. Popo to collect the rice cooker King Piccolo is held within, and actually removing the seal himself once it had been brought safely back to the lookout. This is where we now find our trio turned quartet, as King Piccolo emerges, a maniacal smile to his lips, as he questions why of all people his sworn enemy would release him. However, here, it is Monito who speaks, informing the Demon King that he is the one who has summoned him in order to broker peace between the two halves of the child of Patas. Naturally, King Piccolo, having no idea what this strange old fool is on about, instead declares his intention to consume Kami, and then establish an unending dominion over this world. But before he can do anything of the sort, he is confronted by the other two Namekians, who together prove stronger than the king, subduing him as Kami grouses that he knew this was a bad idea, and that the only solution to the Piccolo problem as he calls it is to seal him away forever. Refusing to go down without a fight, Piccolo needles at his other half, hoping to create an opening, as he sneers that of course that is Kami's solution, as he is too much of a coward to destroy him permanently. That is why it is inevitable that he will win their battle, even if it takes him another few centuries. However, to his shock, Kami is not rattled at all, instead claiming that it is Piccolo who will lose, as even if he were to somehow defeat them, Earth now has protectors so powerful he would tremble in fear like the humans he used to terrorize. This at last puts an end to Piccolo struggling, as his curiosity outweighs his anger in this moment, with him demanding proof, to which Kami provides, matter-of-factly using his guardian powers to show his nemesis the Saiyans and Ceruleans down on the surface. Due to being a part of Kami, King Piccolo is able to sense their energy, though due to not honing this skill and being out of practice, as well as plain old denial, he can only register it in broad strokes, causing him to sneer that even the strongest amongst them, the scarred male with a monkey tail, is no match for him, at least not at the height of his powers. This arrogance gives Kami and Monito an idea, as the two old slugs question if Piccolo would be willing to bet on it, with the Demon King snarling that he'll answer when he hears the terms. Showing his unwavering faith in Bardock once again, Monito as the neutral party proposes that if Piccolo is certain he can beat the Saiyan, then he head on down and fight him. In fact, he does not even have to do so now. He can take as much time as he requires, and even conduct whatever steps he feels will best ensure his victory, short of causing harm to the planet or its inhabitants, that is. Then, when the time to fight comes, if he is able to best his and Kami's champion, the planet will be his, and they, along with all of humanity, will willingly submit to Piccolo's rule. However, should his strength fail him, then Piccolo must submit to their rule, and live peacefully with Kami and the people of this world, never causing trouble for either ever again. Truthfully, Monito had not even needed to say this last part, since as soon as he offered King Piccolo dominion over Earth, his mind had been made up, with him confidently leering that he will accept their bet. Though since the stranger of the Namekian said he could prepare however he wished, there is at least one thing he'd like to do before he begins the battle. The sound of heavy fistfalls on the Son family's door comes as an unwelcome addition to the chaos already brewing inside the house, as presently the adults of the family are trying to corral the boys, making sure they have undertaken all the normal morning requirements, such as bathing and eating breakfast, as well as in keeping them all assembled in the kitchen so they can save time not repeating instructions. It is a vain hope, as this exercise has all the difficulties of herding cats, or rather wrangling tigers, having gone so far as to see Bardock light a cigarette up indoors, much to Gine and Muezli's annoyance, in order to take the edge off. Seeing as how he is currently not helping, and in the hope of getting that foul smell out of the house, Gine instructs her mate to answer the door, which Bardock wordlessly does, stepping forth and pushing it open to reveal a short red-headed man with an eye patch and a cadre of 4 goons. Clearing his throat, the redhead asks if he's Mr. Liu, or would he rather Chun, or maybe Bardock? This quick-fire listing of his aliases causes the Saiyan's jaw to clench as he asks what the man wants, stepping out and closing the door instinctively to shield the rest of his family from the stranger's sight. Smirking domineeringly at Bardock's evident discomfort, the man states that he and his organization have been watching him for a long time, especially since his brats trashed one of their bases not long ago. And what's more, they know he's some kind of spaceman, probably with all sorts of spaceman tech, so in the spirit of neighborliness, they'd appreciate if he turned himself over and all his goodies to them, for the betterment of humanity, naturally. At once, Bardock can tell this guy is full of shit, and so asks just what this organization is, with the man leering that it's the Red Ribbon Army, led by none other than himself, Commander Red. This declaration is not met with the fanfare Red had hoped, as instead of looking impressed, or ideally awed, the Saiyan simply crosses his arms, and in a tone so flat it could be used as a spirit level, states that he's not interested, before instructing these men to leave, as he has business to attend to with his family. Unfortunately, this only causes Red's smirk to twist into a crooked leer, as he retorts that he thinks Mr. Bardock's misunderstood the situation. This ain't a job offer, it's an order. Come quiet or they'll drag him back to the base, after giving his mug a couple more scars. While to most, this would be a considerable threat, Bardock is not most people, and so taking a few steps forward, he soon finds himself towering over the short man, whose cigar is almost close enough to burn a hole in his shirt, while on all sides, the goons raise their guns, ready to open fire at their commander's order. However, this just makes Bardock smirk, though unlike Red's, it is an understated twitch at the corners of his mouth, as he asks if this is what the army means to threaten them with, his tone full of evident contempt, as if he were back in the Frieza Force, dealing with so-called planetary defenders. This is too much for a petty tyrant like Red, who opens his mouth to order his men to attack. Though demonstrating the speed of a spaceman, Bardock moves first, snatching the cigar from his lips and hurling it into the barrel of one of the guns, while spitting his own cigarette into another, causing them both to explode as the burning tobacco hits the small packet of gunpowder in the bullets. Though this is not all he does, as in the moment of shock and confusion that follows this, he employs a hint of drunken boxing, swinging a lazy back fist into the barrel of another gun, causing the metal to warp and bend like plasticine, and double back on his wielder, while simultaneously executing a back kick that sees the final weapon crumple like a tin can, while knocking the gunman onto his back, but not hurting him all too badly. In fact, no one has been harmed by this carefully measured attack, though the army has been disarmed, with it being clear just how much of a disadvantage they are at. Naturally, even despite their reconnaissance, the group of villains are speechless, though this is a blessing, as it allows Bardock to say what he wants without interruption, as he warns them in a low voice to get off his property, with the promise that if they ever come near his family again, he won't just kill them, he'll raise their entire army out of existence. Every base, every weapon, every soldier. Understood? In that moment, Bardock can more clearly feel the visage of the man he once was like a familiar coat, the man who committed genocide without a second thought. And while he does not wish to be that man again, as he sees the terror of Red's one remaining eye, he is reminded of the sense of power his old life brought. However, before he can indulge any further, he feels a tug on his leg, and looking down, he sees Kakarot looking up at him, as he relays the question that his mother had sent him to ask. Do their guests need anything to eat? Such a mundane question, but a perfect encapsulation of what his life is. And so, shaking his head with a gruff smile, he tells the boy that this won't be necessary, as they're just leaving, all of the miles from before drained from his tone. However, in their state of fear, this is not clear to the Red Ribbon contingent, who decide to take the Saiyan up on his mercy, with Red ordering a tactical retreat. Though needing to have the last word, he mutters under his breath that this isn't over. Well, not in the way he had meant. Red is at least right in this regard, as now that the interlopers have been dealt with, Bardock must face the real challenge of the day, a family outing, specifically to Superworld, an earthling amusement park full of loud children, garishly bright colors, and quote-unquote high-speed rides that don't quite live up to the hype, considering most of the group can already fly around the entire planet in less than a few hours. To top it all off, this place has a no smoking and no drinking policy, leaving Bardock in a sullen state as he watches the family explore. Unluckily for him, he too is being watched by none other than Muezli, who begins to hang back so she can speak to Bardock privately, though perhaps speak would be the wrong word, as in truth, it is more of a lecture, as she chides him to stop acting like a baby, reminding him that today is important to Gine and the boys, who don't get many days like this. While Bardock does not appreciate being nagged, the Saiyan male in him can't help but respect her fierce candor, as he grunts in a way that is meant to convey his willingness to at least try. He then begins sidling forward a little, slowly reintegrating himself into the group, as they get some iced cream, which is pretty good he has to admit, as well as taking a spin on one of those roller coasters, even if it's still a bit slow for his liking. After that, they stop off at one of the park's themed restaurants for an early lunch, with Bardock being very glad he has the tournament prize money, as the overpriced food, especially in the quantities required to actually feed 4 Saiyans, almost wipes the entire sum out in one sitting, at least what was left of it after the celebration dinner. Nonetheless, it is a nice meal, with everyone chatting amicably, including Raditz and Granolah, thanks to both being in such high spirits from the fun of the day. Not wanting to interrupt that, Bardock volunteers to be the one to take all their plates back to the counter so the rest of the family can keep chatting, though as he goes, a sudden chill runs down his spine, as a sinister key unlike any other on this planet flares to life nearby. Looking around hurriedly, Bardock sees nothing, with the power rapidly fading as well, causing him to almost wonder if he imagined it. Though even as everything returns to normal, he's sure it was real. It had to be. This leaves the Saiyan on edge as they resume their exploration, with this tension being palpable even without Keith's sense. Though figuring it's just withdrawals from not being able to smoke or drink, Gine kindly invites her mate to choose the next activity they do, in the hopes of easing his mind. Scanning around, Bardock settles on the Ferris wheel, as it would allow him to get a bird's eye view of the park without drawing attention to himself. Not to mention the little round pods making their way automatically through the air have an almost soothing effect on him, as they subconsciously make him think of sleeping in attack pods. Unfortunately, Bardock will not get his Ferris wheel ride, as when he turns back to Gine to answer her, he spots something in the distance. Is that a Namekian? Blinking once again to get a better look, Bardock loses sight of the figure through the ever-moving crowd, once again wondering if his mind is playing tricks on him, since it could have just been one of the park's costume mascots. Though figuring he'd better at least investigate, he tells the others that he'll see them in a minute before dashing away. On a low voice, Raditz grumbles that the old man better not be taking a dump, since he doesn't want to be standing around here forever. Hurrying over to the area where he thought he saw the Namekian, Bardock scans around, finding no sign of the figure, though just as he is about to go back to his family, he feels it once again, that evil key, and turning to face the source, he sees a tall, strapping Namekian standing in the doorway of a haunted house, and upon making eye contact with the Saiyan, he wordlessly beckons him inside. Having a bad feeling about this, Bardock follows, and the moment he steps inside, his hunch is proved right, as the green alien attempts to behead him from the shadows with a chop, which is only averted by Bardock's key sense, allowing him to dodge at the last moment, and spin to face his foe as he demands to know what he wants. Up close, Bardock can't help but think he bears a shocking resemblance to Kambi, except much younger, a fact which is made clear a moment later, as the figure introduces himself as King Piccolo, the rightful ruler of this world, before stating that Bardock has been chosen as Kami's champion. So now they shall engage in a duel to the death, to settle not only this centuries-old feud between light and dark, but to decide the fate of this planet once and for all. Though that's where we'll be leaving this story off, for right now. That's the end of another part, but this is my first Dragon Ball video since the passing of Akira Toriyama sensei. I thought about doing a video specifically to remember his legacy, his work, and what it means to me, but I honestly just never felt right about it, and even now I feel like the sign out isn't really good enough for something like this, but it will force me to keep my words brief and meaningful. And I invite you all to share your own memories here in the comments of this video, since this series itself is all about kind of community and family and coming together. My first vivid and memorable experience with any of Toriyama's work actually came from the space of gaming. To this day, I have a really fundamental memory of playing DBZ Budokai 1 with my older cousin and being absolutely terrible at the game, but still in love with it even so. And it wasn't my GameCube, so it was always a you only get to play it for a certain time while you're visiting kind of deal. Which is how you know I really loved it, because Kirby's Air Ride was also on the roster. And from there, it really is history, having taken me from catching whatever episodes I could on Toonami of the original DBZ dub and playing the games to get a loose grasp of the story, to my first time actually watching the OG Dragon Ball back when every episode was actually just on YouTube for free in just 10-minute parts, to my first time really experiencing the entire story again in really different ways when Kai and DBZA were coming out, to my first experience actually picking up and reading a manga where it beforehand had been a completely different, foreign experience to me, and now is one of my favorite all-time pastimes. Hell, to my first experience going to a theater and sitting down to enjoy an anime movie along with other anime fans. Stuff which has seen me read and watch a massive amount of works which preceded Dragon Ball and took immense inspiration from it, like the Big Three, or even now in going through Dr. Slump and Sandland, I can feel some of the emotions that watching and reading Dragon Ball that first time gave me. Not just because it was a happy and simple time, but because it was a time in which the core philosophy of a lot of Toriyama's works being that limitations themselves are just ridiculous and we should break them for the sake of it, really and truly resonate with me in a meaningful way. Like many of you, Akira Toriyama had an undeniably massive effect on my very sense of imagination, creativity, and just fun. And while it's not an exaggeration to state that I really would not be either who I am or where I am today, it's definitely an understatement to just say that I'm grateful to Akira Toriyama. But to that end, I simply want to say thank you, and I truly hope there's a journey beyond this one that's even more fun than the ones you imagine.